So it's now 7:05. I propose to slowly start. Whoever will join us, they will probably already listen from the Christiane spot. But before that, I want to use a few minutes to tell about the event today and the organizational group behind it. So I'm Max. The body we're doing it with is called Teal, which is a community around self-organization, spiral dynamics, and evolution of organization in general, which we started to build in Ukraine almost 3 years ago. We have today Lilia Lutz and Vladislava Kanevska from the core group from who we started it. We have few practitioners like Nastya, Diana that I see, Andrew as well. I see probably some Christiane's friends that joined us that will hopefully enrich our conversation. Let me see what I need to tell. We have 90 minutes today. We will have a smaller part dedicated to more presentation. The bigger part would be dedicated to the engagement with the use of breakout rooms and sessions. If you can, please turn on your camera, because it's always more pleasant to speak with faces alive. You can during all the event, please feel free to post your questions to the chat. I will gather them and we will address it in the section of questions. Small part in Russian. Если у вас есть проблемы с переводом вашего вопроса или ответа, я могу помочь. Или кто-то из нас, пожалуйста, напишите. Then I want to pass the word to Lilia, and after that to the Christiane. So Lilia, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Wanted to introduce you to Christiane because we had a chance with my colleague Vlada. We had a chance to meet Christiane in person in Budapest and in Vienna on European conferences. And we know that Christiane for many years have been working with companies on implementing self-organized practices. And we do have interest in Ukraine in these practices. Having Christiane opportunity to talk to us, she will have a chance to share practical experience, not only the theory, what is written in the books and what we all know, but how it in reality that works. And that's why we invited Christiane to talk to our community. And besides, we got to know that Christiane is writing an amazing book about love, power, and purpose. And we would like her to speak about the book as well. So, Christiane, the floor is yours, please. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lilia and Max, and all of you for being here and setting this up. It was really exciting because we got reconnected because of my intention to write the book, and in these really interesting times where nothing is as we have ever expected it, it felt like it is the calling of the moment. And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity here and to be able to talk to you. I will sort of take you through a set of slides, and I think my intention is more to frame a lot of my experience, and then we have enough. We're going to have a lot of time afterwards to go deeper into very specific questions, as we said before. And just as a brief introduction, let me try not to be too long about it, but I would say I'm specialized in self-organization since over 10 years, from being a very unhappy and frustrated consultant for organizations and leadership development, with the sense of that really my work is not going anywhere. I ran into Holacracy on my search. I've always been a pioneer, and was among the first people to introduce Holacracy in Europe. And that brought a really steep learning journey and experience journey. And I would like to talk about that experience and the journey at the first part of getting together. So let me start sharing the screen, or is there anything else? Well, I'm a co-founder of 2 organizations that are specialized in bringing the new world of work to organizations. One is encode.org and the other one is Evolution at Work. And I have the experience founding self-organized companies, whilst with those companies developing new forms of self-organization and implementing with organizations actually in different parts of the world, in Europe, in the United States, in Africa, and in Japan. So it's, I would say, pretty diverse. And through all that experience, I have been triggered over and over at similar points where the experience is that it's really hard for people and that something is holding people back. And so I've been on the trajectory or on the exploration of finding what that is for quite a while, which eventually brought me to where I am today, beginning to write the book on love, power, and purpose. And so let me give you a little bit of an idea. Hang on, now I lost Zoom for screen sharing of how I got there. So yeah, we call this the hopes and fears of self-organization. And I think that is a very suitable title because self-organization always, in my experience, triggers both hopes and fears. And when I look into the experiences of what most organizations go through, I really have to say that most organizations that I have learned of that are going into self-organization try out to do a little of this and a little of that, but they don't really question the real foundations of the power hierarchy. And that's the case because we have been learning from our earliest childhood on that things that are organized in a hierarchy and in a power hierarchy. So we think that, you know, we talk about different forms of organizing, but in the end, there is this belief system that holds us to, in the end, someone has to have the say, or in the end, someone has to have control. And it makes a lot of sense, and the power hierarchy has been a very successful model for a very long time, but it has clearly run its course. So when that shift happens, it often is experienced as painful. And so I don't know who of you has experience in implementing holacracy or sociocracy, or trying to sort of develop your own pathway forward based on reinventing organizations, starting with 1 or 2 of the things that are written in this book. I think in the end, it always is somewhat painful. And I have spoken to really many people. And the question is, why does really almost everybody experience it as difficult and as painful? And another experience that I have is that when we reach a point where our fundamental beliefs are questioned, that's when we say this is not for us, or we try something else. But the thing is, in order to actually go all the way to self-organization, you need to go, unfortunately, you need to go through the pain. And that's really, that's what makes it challenging, right? And in all honesty, it is a real journey of letting go of, I would say, almost anything of any of our belief systems that we have, and sit in that space in between, letting go of the known, and then knowing that we have to let ourselves into the unknown and let come So therefore, it's a really fundamental process of unlearning and then of new learning. And what that triggers naturally is a journey of personal development. And I can say that, you know, there are so many answers of how do we structure our organizations so that we can be self-organized. And thinking, and I have to say, in the beginning, when I learned and implemented and became a Holacracy coach, I was a true believer of, you know, implement the structures and the rules and let the people practice and it will work. So after all the many years that I have experienced that, I honestly don't believe that. If you don't actually give a space, a safe space for the individuals and for the people to develop and to learn well, we call it in symbiosis with the shift in organizational structure. From my experience, it really doesn't ever get a full practice where people are actually already also happy, and where actually the promise of self-organization is fulfilled, the promise of it being a liberation. That only works if you go through the deep personal practice. So we hear about self-organization, self-management, Teal, responsive, I don't know, there are so many words out there. And of course, there is no right and no wrong, but I always feel it is really important to understand what you're talking about. So when I talk about self-organization, I mean something specific. And I would like to introduce my understanding of what self-organization is so that you know what I'm actually talking about. So, and I also then will go into, there's a difference between self-organization and self-management. So let me first start with self-organization. I'm going to show you now, I have to, I don't know whether this is going to work. I'm going to have to stop screen sharing for a moment and then go to that link and then go back to screen sharing. Unfortunately, it doesn't work any other way. And I would like you to watch this little video.
If I don't want to make a video like
God.
this
is
of myself,
YouTube
I can just
with
make a really cute one
with its ads. So just bear with me, and I am going to share my screen now again, and I hope that you're going to hear the sound. So this is a 1-minute video. And this is not the screen that I want you to see. I apologize for this. Can you see the YouTube screen right now?
I can see on the slide.
Oh, okay. So I have to stop sharing. I apologize, but this is always difficult with Zoom. And I am going to try this again. Can you see this, the YouTube screen now? Okay,
That's better.
Okay.
Что ты решила сейчас тыкнуть?
So the evolution of the universe in 1 minute. And what we are seeing here is self-organization at play. And let me go back to my screens, to my slides. So since the Big Bang, the universe has developed, and it has developed in a self-organized way. So self-organization is the evolutionary principle of the universe. So that means there are principles and dynamics at play that allow a system, and the universe is a system, and every subsystem of the universe to evolve, to go through evolutionary development in a self-organized way. So self-organization as the evolutionary principle of the universe. And why are we talking about self-organization at all? Because, you know, we're talking about our companies being self-organized. So, I mean, we have a system of organization that has been, you know, has been tested and has been working for quite a while. And for many organizations, it actually still works. So why is there this global movement, this incredible need that is emerging, that is evolving? It is an evolutionary development for self-organization. And I mean, that's not new to you. To make it complete, I just have to state this. So we have become extremely fast and extremely complex. So we've always had complexity, but the complexity is playing out and is ruling our world today in an incredible pace, incredibly fast. And we are eventually or finally reaching a point where we understand that the global economy needs to tune into the needs of people and planet equally. And that people and planet are not separate. We are just one big system. Nature, I always find it funny when I hear people say we have to reconnect to nature. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. We need to understand that this is a whole system, and that if we organize and if we do things, we need to consider that those things, how we organize and that we bring into the world, serve people and planet equally. And this is becoming more and more common knowledge, thankfully. And so the corporations are sensing that need to both become faster and more adaptable, and also to serve people and planet equally. And here's where we come to the title of what we spoke about. So the hopes and the fears of self-organization. So the hopes obviously are that self-organization can serve both those needs. Number one, help us to become fast, adaptable, and nimble, and therefore be a good fit to the complexity and the pace of our world, and at the same time understand how can we serve people and planet equally. And this is where the purpose-driven movement comes in, that we understand that purpose is, if we serve a purpose with an organization, we understand that purpose is that need that emerges from the system of people and planet, and everything that stands for this connection. So truly the hopes are, please let us learn different forms of to express self-organization in order to serve both those needs. So what I'm showing you here is a very simplified sort of animation of what we just saw in this 1 minute video, right? It's the evolutionary development of the universe. You have the universe, you have solar systems, you have galaxies first, and solar systems, then planetary and star systems, and that it breaks down, and one of the planets is Earth, and then it breaks even further down in ever smaller parts. And this evolution, if we understand that, whatever science tells us today, the universe is still expanding and growing with ever increasing complexity, that follows certain principles. And those of you who are knowledgeable about systems theory will already know that, but the principles that drive self-organization are self-maintaining. So self-organized systems are self-maintaining. That means they maintain themselves, keep themselves alive. They are self-renewing. They renew themselves in order to keep themselves alive. So our skin, for example, is a really great example for self-renewing. We as a body are a self-organized system, and our body has hugely complex dynamics going on to maintain itself, to keep ourselves alive. And for example, our skin, we shed skin flakes all the time. So our body flakes off skin and renews the skin for our own self-maintaining. And self-organized systems are self-transcending. So that means they change, they transcend by themselves according to the needs of the environment, and self-transcending in service of self-maintenance and self-renewing. And all this within our own meaning-making process. So every system has its own meaning-making process. So meaning-making would be, in the sense of an organization, would be fulfilling a purpose, for example. Like we as humans have our own individual purpose, which gives us our own meaning-making processes. And it depends from which system you're actually talking about. But self-organized systems are self-maintaining, self-renewing, and self-transcending within their own meaning-making processes. So we need to take this and move that forward when we talk about self-organizing our companies, for example. If we talk about the universe as a whole, or we talk about a cell, like this is a picture of a cell, of an animal cell, the organizing principles are the same. So I'd like to go back to this picture. This, when we look at the organizing principles of the entire universe, or of a cell of an animal, we have the same organizing principles: self-maintaining, self-renewing, and self-transcending. And those are the principles that we try to translate, that we can translate into our companies. We can mirror those organizing principles in our companies. So what does that mean, right? I mean, this is a picture that is taken from one of the software that is available to show how the structure of a self-organized company that is mirroring self-organizing principles of nature and the universe as a whole. So what do we learn from nature? Number one, self-organization has structure. There is a lot of misunderstanding often. I don't know if any one of you has gone through the experience that there is a hierarchical organization, and then someone who feels called to moving the structures forward says, okay, we're kicking out the hierarchy, we're making a flat organization. I have experienced that over and over again. It just leaves nothing but big confusion, and nature isn't flat. So we do have a very clear structure, and we also have a very clear hierarchy. The thing is, it is not a power hierarchy. It is a structural or a functional hierarchy, but it is not a power hierarchy. The organic hierarchy is called a holarchy. So believe me, holacracy was not the one to invent the term holarchy. So the term holarchy, or the concept of the holon, was invented by a guy called Arthur Koestler, and he wrote a book called The Ghost in the Machine in the 60s of the last century. And this is where the whole explanation of an organic structure being a holarchy, a system of holons, was invented. And Holacracy took this concept and translated it into what is known as Holacracy today. And then basically the holarchy is a decentralized system of distributed authority. So decentralized, you don't have a centralized power authority to control what is going on. It's a distributed system. And I would like to draw your attention here to the term authority, because I very consciously do not say a system of distributed power, a system of distributed authority, because I think it is important to make a distinction between the two. And I will come back to that a little bit later. Okay, so now we come to the fears. If we say the hopes and the fears of self-organization. If we go back to the last sentence here, that a holarchy is a decentralized system of distributed authority, that points, from my experience, to that what very often creates the fears that I often see when we talk about self-organization, or when we are in the process of going into self-organization. And there are many different fears that come up. Insecurities, of course, the fears of not being able to function well in such a system, fear of not being competent. And there's a number of fears, but there is one sentence that can subsumize all those fears together. And that is the fear that without power at play, everything will eventually be completely out of control. So here the term power comes back again, and underlying is the belief that for people who are given personal power in a power hierarchy, that they have the possibility to understand and control the system, which is of course a complete myth. There is no way you can actually control a system. And especially every system has its self-organizing dynamics. So if you control a system, you basically interfere with self-organization instead of letting it play out. So there are a lot of fears, and I have spoken with very many people who were invited to go through the process of distributing what is often called power, but actually is a distribution of authority. And people who have gone through really long processes of making a career, of working really hard to become a leader of a team or of an organization. If you invite these people to say, okay, so now your job is taken away and you're not a leader anymore, and you don't have the power anymore because now we have a system of distributed authority, that naturally creates a lot of fears, because people then feel they don't have the power anymore, but they're still going to be held responsible or accountable. And that's just speaking with one of the fears, right? And so I've addressed that. So why the issue of power so often leads to fear. And about everything that I've said, it's generally our belief that power is something that enables us to do things, right? So, and then if you say, okay, we're kicking out the power hierarchy, now we don't have bosses anymore, and so on, it creates that feeling of powerlessness, and nobody wants to feel powerless. So what it really is, it is the story that we are used to telling ourselves around what power is. And having learned about those many fears that this creates, and of course, fear makes us vulnerable. And very often we don't feel comfortable to show our vulnerability. And so we put up a like put up a mask and pretend we're going along, but it does create, and I've seen that many, many, many times. It creates a lot of frustration and makes people unhappy if you just say we are now going to do this, but the actual underlying dynamics are not really fully understood. And so that started me out on trying to understand even deeper, number one, what power is and why power is such an important issue when it comes to shifting into this new world of work. Because honestly, we often underestimate how deep-rooted our belief systems are. It starts in the family, in the school, in our sports clubs, in whatever systems we grow up in, we have power at play. That's just because that's the way our world has functioned for a really long time. So really to be able to understand that we need to shift our story about what power is, instead of looking and trying to understand that we now don't have power anymore. That is a really not useful way of looking at the shift. So what is it about power that needs to shift? And when I went on that search, I found, if you Google what is power, I mean, endless, limitless answers to that. And what I found is every single answer to the question of power led me into a judgment, okay? Into the judgment whether power is good or power is bad. And I was desperately looking for something that would help me understand. So nobody wants to feel powerless. We are not in service of anything if we feel powerless. And yet, if we understand power which always goes into a power over, like I have the power to move something or others, then I have power over. And then it is very quickly something where we experience it as overpowering and as not useful. And on that search, I ran into a definition of power from someone called Teal that really, really touched me. And I would like you to just take a breath and listen to this definition. Power is the drive of everything living to realize itself with increasing intensity and extensity. So extensity means expansion. Power is the drive of everything living to realize itself with increasing intensity and extensity. So being very much a believer of personal development and also a believer that we, in the course of our life, a life is about realizing ourselves. And self-realization is a really important process for us people as we grow. So that definition really touched me, because it doesn't invite me to say either power is good or bad. It invites me into looking at power as something that is. And I think that is what is needed currently now. How can we integrate power as something that simply is? And I found that Teal was the professor. He's a German-American professor who was the doctor father of Martin Luther King. And on my search, so looking about power, let me just quickly take a look at my watch. Looking at power from that perspective, I then also started thinking, okay, so if everything living self-realizes with increasing intensity and extensity, so if I continuously realize myself, where is the principle that also sets a boundary, right? So that I don't self-realize over everything else. And on that search, I ran into a quote. No wonder that quote is by Martin Luther King. Again, he learned with Paul Tillich. And he said, "Power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic." And when I found this, I started to realize that power needs love and love needs power. So then, of course, the next question was, so how do we define love? So love is often defined as an emotion. But like with the terminology of power, I started going on searching. This time it didn't take me long because I came back to Paul Tillich, who defines love as the drive to unify the separated, but not to create unity. It is to reveal the unity that is there. So I had to sit on that for a little bit, but I'm a strong believer, and I said that before, that everything is connected, that nothing is absolutely alone and individual. We're all connected with everything is connected. Nothing and no one can exist on and in itself. And then if we can understand that love is that what makes us understand, that reveals the unity that is. If we sense that we are connected with everything at any given moment in time, and at the same time we self-realize with increasing intensity and extensity without letting go of the connectedness, meaning of love, we then have the power and love regulation. And we can then understand, if we transcend our stories about power, about being truly powerful, our authentic power, being powerful in a loving way. And I want everybody else to be as powerful in a loving way through the understanding of the connectedness. Just imagine what we can move forward in this world. And then if we have this connectedness and serve a purpose together, then we have the organizations, the human endeavors that serve people and planet equally. So how do we all translate all that back into the self-organizing company? So having taken that route of power and love, and how when we transcend the stories, it is not about power over, it is taking power as what it is and staying connected. How can we mirror that and bring that understanding into our organizations, into our human endeavors, and thus serve people and planet equally? So there is that. Now I'm coming back to that other important differentiation, and that's the differentiation of power and of authority. So we speak about systems of distributed authority, and so this is really, this is the way I put it, because it has proven to be really useful. Power is something that we hold personally. Power is a personal thing. Authority is something that can be granted, or that can be granted systemically. So for those of you who know what role-based work is, right? So roles have accountabilities, and those accountabilities describe the authority of that role. And I think I'm going to go more into detail why this is useful to make that distinction. because of the experience I made with Holacracy. And I have to say that the learnings that what I learned through actually learning Holacracy and practicing it and understanding it and learning through the personal journey and the dynamics, the learning is incredibly valuable. And personally, I have moved on, taking the useful stuff of it along. And one of the useful things that I have learned in Holacracy is you might have heard that is Holacracy governs the organization and not the people. So Holacracy is a system that serves the structure. It is a tool, if you want to, a rule set to structure work in service of purpose. And what that clearly does is it allows the structure to be to have self-organized dynamics purely in service of the organization's purpose. What it does do, it makes a distinction, and distinction is important, not a separation. It makes a distinction between the organization and the people. So what that distinction is you have organizational dynamics that are captured in a rule set that describes how the organization, based on self-organizing principles, okay? We know that self-maintaining, self-renewing, and self-transcending, and mirror that in the organizational dynamics, and that works. It does completely cut off the social and interpersonal dynamics that run in parallel. And that has super great value if we understand that it doesn't mean those social dynamics are not allowed and are not super valuable. They are just different. Social dynamics are different than structural dynamics. So redefining the organization as the structural system in service of purpose means that, and that is a big challenge to many people, is the organization is not a social, a complex social system. The social system is a complex social system, and the organization is only the structure. And learning that differentiation brings clarity from a confusion. And that has to do with power and authority, because in the organization, we have distributed authority. That means power is not anchored personally. We have ascribed authority. And in that moment, if we have that, the power issues then become an issue of interpersonal issue, but in a way that there is no what's the word, legitimization anymore. Power over isn't legitimate anymore. In the power hierarchy, it's okay to hold power over another person. In a system of distributed authority, you don't have those descriptions anymore. And with power being an interpersonal dynamic, we now have a social system where those dynamics become visible and where we need completely different processes, different interpersonal processes to deal with the tensions and with the issues that come up in the social dynamics. But we cannot deal with social dynamics with a governance process that we use in the organizational dynamics. So we need different processes and different dynamics in those different contexts. This is just an issue of being context aware. And so if we understand that, we can then truly let ourselves into self-organization. We have the structure, and it has proven as mirroring the cell structure or the organic hierarchy. The Holacracy is with circles and roles and accountabilities and policies and processes. That's all organizational. And then we have clarity about the social system. That's where we have agreed upon values and norms of the collective of the people that come together to then energize the work in the organization. And that's where we talk about interpersonal expectations, where we have conflicts, learning and development. Those are the social dynamics that run parallel to the organizational dynamic, and each of them has its own context. So, and that means that we actually have a process, self-organized processes in both contexts. Only in a social context, we can't build up a rule set that is the same for everybody because social systems are different. But we can have systems that are, I would say, standardized or more or less standardized for the organization to be self-organized from the learnings that we've had. And then we have sort of the organizational stuff out of the way, and then we can create, and I've done that in various organizations to create the so-called people context, which is the safe space for the social system and the social dynamics that we always have when people come together. Without supporting the personal development that enables and integrates this distinction, full self-organization is practically impossible. And there are very, very few systems that actually allow that. We've developed something that we call the symbiotic enterprise, which enables that awareness of organization context and people context. And that is surrounded with an enterprise context, which functions as a bridge between the outside world that is not yet self-organized and the self-organizing systems inside in the organization context and then the people context. And coming back to, to love and power, when we work in this way, to understand that this is a question of perspective taking. I can, on the same issue, I can take a perspective from the organization, and I can take a perspective from me personally, and I will learn different things about an issue that has come up while we're working together. And navigating that is possible. And besides, in the symbiotic enterprise, when we build that up, we actually train the people at the same time to navigate this perspective taking and navigating these contexts consciously, which means that we even have a different language of how we communicate, and then we can, in the people context, once the organizational stuff is out of the way, I have the experience that you can then start building relationships in an honesty and in a depth that I have never ever seen in any form of organization before. So to me, this is super inspiring. Okay, so I hope that was okay time-wise. It's kind of late. I'm going to stop screen share, but maybe just a word now. So I honestly believe that transcending our understanding of power and transcending our understanding of love and bringing those two together in a new way holds the power to shift, deeply shift the way we are functioning as a society. And that's why I want to write this book. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much. What would you like to do as next?
Well, I think I didn't follow the questions on the chat. Are there a lot of questions in the chat, or do we need breakout groups?
There are 4 now. You can check it out in the chat. I can also send them to your Facebook if you like.
Let me just quickly go through the chat. I think it would be great if we could do just a short breakout group. I don't know, maybe like, can we do pairs for just 5 minutes? I think that would be useful to kind of sort our thoughts. We just do 5 minutes in pairs. Max, can you do that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if there would be a situation that you don't have a pair or there are some problems, then we'll be just back to the session in 5 minutes. Yes. Option to take something you would like. Okay, so we have 20 people. I'm creating 10 rooms for great. 5 minutes.
We have the 3 questions. So what was new, what was most interesting, and what are open questions? And then please bring your questions back into our Q&As. Okay.
Okay. So switch into the rooms.
Yes, please. Enjoy. But you're putting me into a group, so I'm not going to join.
Okay.
Okay, maybe you can take me out, and then if someone is alone, you can put them together.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people here in the meantime. I didn't see the people come up. That's so
nice. Yeah, we got to almost 30 people at one time.
Oh.
Let's see.
Go ahead. So maybe you can put 3 together.
Yeah, it can be. To the room 5. And Natalia maybe to the room 3. Diana, please join also. Whoever hasn't, please click there. There will be a button to join the breakout rooms. Your pairs are waiting for you.
So there's still Gloria and Darina.
Yeah, well, at least I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full rooms.
Okay. So let me just quickly go and look. Oh, have you captured? If we go forward, not the future of organizations, but backwards in time, and analyze whether holacracy is natural in Darwinian terms, what does it give us? Did humans before states and larger tribes live in holacracy?
Oh wow, so many great conversation going on. I just listened to bits, but yeah, hope they will share.
Yeah, I hope so too. Max, those questions, should we go to the chat box first, or I think I would like to go to questions that people bring in first and then come back to the questions in the chat box, because those won't get lost, right?
Would you like to get them by voice or in text?
Oh, by voice would be nice.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I think both should be possible.
Okay.
Right? So some people are comfortable writing them down. Others want to be. Others would like to speak. So what we would probably need to do is invite people to formulate the questions short to the question point, if possible. But anyway, when it takes longer, it doesn't matter. I have my pen and my thing here to write down. How much longer?
We have another minute before I will broadcast to everybody that
25 minutes for Q&As. That's good.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for navigating all this with the...
My pleasure. I already got really warm feedbacks to your talk, saying that it was really cool.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I also sent a few screenshots about love and power to the chat. That was really amazing.
Wow. So yeah, I've never told my story in that way before. It's so exciting, I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting people back.
Yay.
From the backup rooms.
Oh, get back. Hi.
Hi. We're back.
Yay.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So Max and I, we just had the conversation. So we would like to have the possibility, offer you both possibilities. So you can either bring your questions and write them into the chat box. But I'm a communicator, so I would really like also to talk to you directly. So if you can bring your question in directly, that would be lovely too. So, you know, just raise your hand or unmute yourself, and when two people start at the same time, we'll self-organize around it. So and let it happen. So yeah, Joachim.
So
Hello, danke Christiane. So first of all, thank you for that beautiful presentation. That was gorgeous. Really nice overview of what this is all about.
Thank you so much.
So I was together with Michael here, and we both coming from a technology field, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and trying to figure out how to get organized in these spaces, right? Me personally, I come from a group called the Digital Life Collective that has done some work on sociocracy and used that kind of organizational form to work together, to coordinate things, right, to cooperate. Right now I'm with Hi-Fi and Seeds. That's kind of a movement / organization that's trying to push out a new regenerative currency, moving into a regenerative type of society. So to me, again, you know, thank you for this this kind of journey. And I see the pain points everywhere, right? And it's not only sort of the traditional organizations that are trying to convert to something like this. It's also startups. It's young organizations. You know, they're coming up with the same kind of issues. And as you point, you know, as you go through the layers, right, of what are we trying to do? You know, how do we build the trust, the relationships? You always end up sort of at the bottom, as you nicely pointed out. There's adult development theory somewhere hiding, right?
Yeah.
So you have to get to that stage, right? And that's what Michael and I just discussed. You know, the surprise that how deep that stuff goes, right? It's not just another form of an organization. This goes much deeper. That you have to instill, you know, get into these deeper layers to make that successful. So there's a lot more to unpack. So I just wanted to reflect on what you've done and the good work that's coming out of this. So kudos to that.
Wow, thanks a lot, Joachim. That's really nice of you. And thank you, yes, also for pointing out it's not just those organizations that shift, it's also startups that, you know, often there's a crowd, 3, 4, maybe 5 really passionate people who crowd together, and in the startup phase, it's really easy to be passionate and go together and start working with everything, and everybody does everything. And then organizational need pops up, and then the power dynamics start kicking in. And it has, you know, best friends end up being horrible enemies, and terrible stuff happens. And it is just so sad. It's just so sad, purely based on the stories that we have been told and therefore are telling ourselves. So yeah, let's redefine.
Yes.
We just need to start telling new stories, really. I mean, it's difficult, but it's possible. Thank you, Joachim.
Thank you.
I see the raised hand from Sanjay from some time ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Diana, right?
Bill Gates, I know Joachim as well, same part of the same network. Good to see you here, Joachim. And one of my questions is, you made a powerful play in terms of structure existing in spite of being a self-organizing organization. So my question is, have you actually seen tools and technologies that would enable for establishing clarity on the structure itself as to how these organizations operate?
Well, yes, thank you for the question. And I hope I understood your question correctly. So if in case you don't get the answer you're looking for, please make sure, yeah? But, you know, Sociocracy was the first one that actually tried to develop that sort of organic structure. And then it was followed up by Holacracy, making a Holacracy. So Sociocracy, by the name, still makes it all about the people. And then came the counter movement from Holacracy, out of a technological background, that makes it all about the organization. And it's a highly useful tool for structure and to govern work, right? But it leaves out the people side. So, and with Sociocracy, I know from many organizations, they just get very stuck because it's all about how people feel and not so much about what the organization needs. And in all honesty, you need both. And so there's the framework is described for the symbiotic enterprise. It's implemented in organizations in different parts of the world. And I'm just finishing writing the handbook. So that will be available. So please send me a message at my email address, christiane@christianesplace.com, and I'll be happy to. It'll be a little while because there's so much that wants to be written, but I'm almost done with it. And it's an evolutionary step forward. It's going beyond Sociocracy and beyond Holacracy, and just from that understanding of the depth that Joachim just pointed to, the depth of personal development that is necessary is always underestimated. And people need their own time and their own speeds. And so you need the symbiosis of the organization system and the people system. If you don't get that going, it's going to be at the expense of the organization or at the expense of people.
So my question is also, do you foresee existing, I know because of our bias towards using technology, are there actual tools and technologies that enable for this framing of the two to be handled, the issues that come up on both sides, more effectively and efficiently? That's also part of the question.
Well,
yeah. Are there tools that actually enable handling both of this successfully?
Actually, there's only tools that handle the organizational side.
Gotcha.
And if someone is interested in it's very hard to get a tool, but I am super interested in finding and developing a tool that will support the people side as well. It doesn't exist yet. And I have developed a methodology that supports the core capacities, the people capacities, and I'm in dire need for software that supports that. So if you have a company that wants to do that, let me know. I'd be really excited about that. But there's Glassfrog and Holaspirit for the organizational side of it.
Okay.
But not yet any software that supports the symbiotic enterprise.
So Joachim, just make a note, okay?
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll connect with you further.
Yes, please. Oh my God, this is exciting.
Thank you so much.
I think Diana, thank you, Sanjay. I think Diana was the next with her.
My hand, yeah.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for your time and what you shared with us. This has been really putting things in order and clarifying things that I've been reading before. So we were paired with Natalia, and we talked about how what was new and important for us is the distinction between people and culture and organization and structure, and how important is personal development for any evolutionary forms of organization. And so our question was actually the same question, open question is, so how do you explain to the people the importance of such self-development and how to maybe introduce it? Because there's not enough already conscious, self-organized people in the world to put them together in a team right away. You have to input time into growing people in your team. So yeah, maybe I know it's a very broad question, but maybe some tips on that.
So generally, it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the purpose, the subject of the organization. It depends. So it depends on very many different things. But I think, wow, that's a really hard question to answer because it really depends. So in many organizations, there is already that inherent need of, people want to be more autonomous. People want to be more creative. People want to feel that they are not micromanaged. And then it will be easier. What needs, it needs a lot of time if you have, I really don't know how to answer that question. It's so dependent on what the organization is and where the organization is standing. And like we said before, is it a startup? Is it already an organization that has a lot of history? But I do think what you do need to do is, if you have an existing power hierarchy, you need to go top down. Because if the people in the top aren't willing to start learning and going through the personal development themselves, it'll never work. And I've experienced a lot of organizations where the top management says, hey, HR department, you go and make the teams agile. And then people are struggling. And then, in the end, when the day comes to an end, top management says, yeah, that's all really good, but please do this, right? and then it just doesn't work. So it really needs to be top down. And if someone comes to me, I never, ever, 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 ever try to convince someone that this is a way to go. It has to be a need that comes from the system itself, right? So people ask me how I do sales. I don't do sales. It's like, it's like you cannot convince anybody that this is a good way forward. There has to be a desire and a need from the system to go through that. And you have to be really clear that for a certain period of time, like with every change, you know, we all know what change management is, but it makes chaos in the system. But that is a change of deeper shift as well. So you will have to have enough resources for the system to be out of order for a while, right? Otherwise, it also won't work. And you have to allow that. So if you have a specific example, it's easier to answer that question.
I've got 2 questions, if I may ask. So first one, you were telling about a person who's like, in simple words, who is afraid of losing a job or giving its power because there's no position of a manager or head of department of someone. And my question is, for example, if we take the IT sphere, the IT specialist was developing, he was making code, he was coding for a while, and then he moved to a manager's position. And now he quit coding and he is losing his skills in coding. Mm-hmm. And then comes self-organization. So what is your practice? What happens with that person? Because he lost his experience, his knowledge, his skills in coding, and now he is not like a manager. This is the first question. And the second one, when the company has to come through the pain, as you mentioned, because evolution sometimes it pains. Mm-hmm. When we are growing, when we are teenagers and we are growing, sometimes we have pain in our body as well. So when the organization has to come through that pain, how not to scare, how not to lose this intention for development and not to go back to the previous stage. Mm-hmm. 2 questions.
So the first one, going back to your coder who isn't a coder anymore. I think the question is, from the perspective of the coder, what does the coder want? Not so much from the perspective of the organization. Because from the organizational perspective, if you start structuring in a self-organized way, you ask the question, that's like a mantra, what is the work and where does it live? So you define the work that is necessary in service of purpose. And the work lives in different parts of the structure. So now you have different, roles available. And now the people, you need the best fit, right? So, and now you don't do people management anymore in self-organization. And now the question for the coder is, what is my next step as an individual, right? Do I want to go back to coding, or what is my next step? What is available here in the organization? And the good thing about that type of working is, you can, it's flexible. If you feel you don't have one job, you have different roles, that. And therefore you have, you can shift smaller parts. So it's more, the question is, what is the next step for the person? Okay. So that's one. And the second question, I'm afraid I forgot. I didn't write anything down. Just
how not to go back to the previous stage, how not to lose.
So there is no guarantee for that. I can tell you, a Swiss company, fairly large company, starting with one department of going into self-organization, that worked really well. it was like a snowball effect. 2, 3 other departments wanted to do that too. It was almost like a picture book process, and then the CEO changed and pulled the plug. And it has a load of frustrated people, because now it's back to people management and so on. So it's, and to be quite honest, the only way you can avoid that is to shift into self-organization full on. And that means that you bring it in all the way into the legal system, where you have where you actually have in the operating agreement of the company, you have distributed governance, you have governance in the decision-making process. And there is a system that enables that, and that is the so-called for-purpose enterprise, which is the self-organizing entity that ENCODE has developed, and is now going from one jurisdiction to the next, where you then actually have a system where you don't have employees, everybody is an investor. And I'm looking at Joachim, and so talking about generative financing. So we have completely distributed financing instruments and everything there. And that is like, that's self-organization on steroids, if you want to. And there, you actually have in the founding documents, you disable individual power so that there is no one person that can actually pull the plug on it.
Okay.
It exists, but it's moving forward slow, because you have to question the legal system in every single country to find an answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's a question about Ukraine, especially. I don't know if.
Yeah, but it's a question everywhere,
yeah.
I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thank you. So what is it? Michael raised his hand.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, at first, thank you, Christiane, for your session. It was very interesting and useful for me. I already expressed my feeling after your session to the Joachim, because as the first, I expected that it will be something more about the personal self-organization, how you can optimize your time, be more effective, and so on. Yeah, but now, and at first I was a little bit confused. Yeah, and it's funny, because now I see that it's much deeper topics that you uncover for me, and there are a lot of things that I need to figure out maybe and investigate a little bit more deeper. The second things, I would like to share my opinion or maybe comment on this when you show the slides, and comment on when the people lose the power and hierarchy, and they confused and they fear. I think the problem is here because most of the people, just by nature, they tend to follow, and only few people tend to lead. I think this is general in the society, on the history, and in different countries. And then when people lose this hierarchy, they kind of boss, right? They have no idea what to do. They're afraid to take responsibility and act on their own, and make some decisions and make action, because they're afraid to do something wrong and accept it. Because usually they have the guy or girl who tells them do this, I expected from you this kind of result, and so on. And this person just follow instruction, because it's always easy to follow when someone tells you what to do than create your own strategy and your plan, how to organize your time, your work, and etc. So what you thought of it?
Yeah. So yes, thank you, Michael. And it's so interesting, and yet there is a strong Teal Ukraine movement, and there seems to be an underlying need. And it is going to happen. I mean, in some parts of the world sooner, in some parts of the world later, but it is going to happen step by step. And I think people like to, like you say, people think they like to follow because they see that the people who lead have so much responsibility. and they don't.
Sorry, I see. This is the easy way. They like not to like maybe, but for them it's like an easy way to follow than to lead, because it's more responsibility for you. It's required from you more work to be a leader, to take all of like care about the others people.
Yeah, and that's a misconception. I think that's the story that we tell ourselves, and work is work. So I think it's just the story, quite honestly. And I know, I mean, it's the story that many people tell themselves, but sooner or later they will learn that there is also a different way, and that a different way, that taking on responsibility doesn't necessarily mean there's going to, and now I have more responsibility, and in the end there's going to a boss who's going to tell me I'm not doing a good job anyway. It's like they don't have, the story's not there. It's just not there. They don't know what it looks like. And I think that's a process, that the more organizations start working that way, the more people will hear about it, and then they will maybe have a friend who works in a different environment. So I think it's going to spread. And if people aren't ready to take responsibility, they won't. And you shouldn't force them. So,
who should force them? Yeah, they can't force themselves, right? You see? Yeah, okay.
But some organizations shift and then people leave. It's natural.
Christiane, to that point, leadership is actually non-hierarchical, right? Power is hierarchical. You can be the lowest on the totem pole, yet be a leader. And I think there's a lot of times people confuse between the two, in terms of the expectation is that you have to be in a position of power to be a leader. But I'm wondering in terms of the cultural context of that.
Yes, Sanjay, I'm sorry. Can I just, I know that, for example, can I come back to you a little bit later? Sure. Because we've been, so I think, Max, I think you have a little bit of an overview. I'm sorry, Sanjay, I don't want to cut you.
No worries, no worries.
I'm really happy to come back to that because I think it's really important. But Max, can you help me, please? I think it was Vlada, was it you next? Yes.
Please.
Yes, please.
So nice to be in such a provocative, in a good way, community with all these questions. And what came to my mind, especially after we discussed this a little bit with Lilia, surprisingly we went into the scene, into the pair. Yeah, but that was comfortable actually. And you know, probably the time working with conflicts mostly as a mediator and facilitator. And when I'm even like teaching or doing seminars or webinars now for like explaining what we should change in our approach to conflict, yeah, because for people conflict is something wrong, something bad, but actually we are trying to give this idea that conflict is a signal, is a chance to change something, and investment, yeah. So to be able to change something, you should at least to be able to give a sign that I'm not agree with how things are like going on, how this happened before. Probably I have no ideas how this should looks like now or in the future, but I know how I don't want them to be these things. And this is very interesting about who should start these changes in the company, yeah. So is it starts from the organizational and structure, I don't know, sign an initiative, or from the people's side? Because, for example, you should be brave, coming back to the fears and hopes. So you should at least have hope to overcome this fear, to change something, yeah, and to stand with this voice to manifest that I want changes. Yeah, and this is very interesting. Who is this initiator? Who is this provocator in a good way that we should change something? Who should be able to mirror that, hey guys, looks what's going on? And in many situations, facilitator or mediator who invited to, mediator is to work with conflict, but at least for facilitators, especially for qualified one, is a kind of very interesting mission to mirror what's going on for the team and to ask question about, do you see what's happening now, or how do you reflect about this or that? Yeah, so to help and to push a little bit and to build this container for people to be able to change. And this is very interesting about this, like it changes. Yeah, we know like in ideal way how this should be, yeah, but who should start these changes? Where, when, how? Yeah, it's always very interesting question. Yeah, so where is this tiny moment to start these changes, and who should do that? Yeah.
So again, it really depends on the organization. The thing that I now am actually experiencing, so the organization, it always needs a heroic decision to say, okay, now we're going to shift into a different system. Because in all honesty, the people who finally have the last say in this have to let go of then having the last say. So that's it's always a process of someone has to make the decision. The question is, how well prepared is it to create the safe space for the people? In the end, it is not the people's choice if you want to, whether it's going to go self-organized or not, right? It's the people's choice to influence how and at what speed, and to take care of their own needs. And that's a huge, like you say, right? That's a huge learning jump. So it depends on how you build the support structure for the people to feel psychologically safe. Because in all honesty, if you have those, let's say in a symbiotic enterprise, you differentiate the spaces, and that means that personal conversation is a true personal conversation, then we're talking about relationship and not about work. And that leaves us vulnerable and naked. We can't hide behind the job, right? So it is about creating a safe space for that. That's the work that we do. And it is also, when I say I create a safe space, is create a space where the social system can create its own dynamics to learn. So that's what, as much as I can say right now. And conflict is actually to learn to deal constructively with conflict is at the core of the relationship building there, because the conflict now, you cannot play it over your job and over work. It goes directly from person to person. And that, of course, is a huge learning jump, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, right? That's a whole conversation in itself, right? So I am just, thank you, Vlada. That's we're way over time. I'm not stressed. I don't know, maybe you have other commitments. I'm really happy to go back also to promise. I promised to Sanjay that I would come back and say something to his contribution, which I would be happy to. And I don't know, maybe that's the last thing that we do. So Sanjay, if I may come back to you on your issue of leadership. So I've written on christianesplace.com on my blog, there's an article called Leadership and Power Shift, the unconscious dichotomy that is holding us back. And it is challenging our understanding of leadership as being the leaders and the others being the followers. And as I define leadership as a systems capacity, that means you need leadership in every part of the system. And that is what is needed in self-organization. So this is just confirming, as what you were saying, if you have a self-organized system, you need a lot of self-leadership and need a lot of capacity to lead yourself and your work. And then you have systemic leadership. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. Okay, so
can you tell some words about your book as well?
Yeah, thank you.
And about how we can help to let that appear and to see the world, because I know that you're working on that book on your own. So just a few words and how we can support you if you have an opportunity and the will.
Lilia, thank you so much for that. So I started to go about, making or reorganizing my life to write the book, and decided that it would take me a lot of focus, and I can't. So I decided I would have to drive down my work, and then COVID hit. And COVID hit me completely. So I was a nomad traveling all over the world, doing my workshops and my speeches and my seminars, and this is everything cut out completely. So now I made a choice, and for the first time in my life, I overcame my own vulnerabilities, and I decided to ask for help. So I've started a crowdfunding campaign and I'm asking the whole world to help me be able to focus on writing this book, because I do need to do a lot of research, and it'll be, I assume, half a year. And that's why I started a crowdfunding campaign, and I have now started, I've now started with my research, and I'm now starting to write. Well, I haven't started writing, but I'm working on the structure and on the research for my book, and I still need help. So if you can, the smallest bit of contribution is really appreciated highly. And I think, yeah, Max just put the link to the crowdfunding campaign in the chat box. So I really appreciate that possibility also to say that. So thank you, Lilia. Lilia, sorry for mispronouncing your name.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely, that's fine. Thank you.
And I'm just really excited about the interest and the energy here. That is so beautiful. So, if we want to do something on more detailed on the symbiotic enterprise, or if we want to do something on language of spaces, which is the framework around the personal development, let me know. I'll be really happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
So maybe before I give it back to you.
Really interesting. Yeah, it was really exciting and really interesting. Thank you so much for that.
I would like to thank you so much for the invitation once again. And yeah, I don't know, do we have, yeah, so my website is in the invitation. My email address is christiane@christianesplace.com. If you have further questions, please contact me. And back over to you, Max and Lilia, and big thank you to you both for organizing this, and thanks for everybody being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to add to that.
Participants. Yeah, Max, please.
Yeah, have everybody have a great evening, have a great rest. Thanks for everybody to join, and especially Christiane. We hope to continue this conversation pretty soon. On this moment, cheers and see you later.
I would love that. Let's continue. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.